The polling stations open in Portugal, but the results of the general election are expected to be tight. Senior Tories join opposition leader Keir Starmer's calls to see Sue Gray's report in full amid fears it won't be complete. Protests against COVID-19 restrictions take place in Vienna as authorities announce a gradual ease of measures from early February. A demonstration in Amsterdam is calling on authorities to push forward a new law against sexual harassment. North Korea is suspected of conducting its largest missile test ever since 2017, in a month of renewed weapon tests. Polling stations in Portugal are now open, and the results in this general election are expected to be tight. The latest polls suggest that no party will get a clear majority in Parliament. A late surge by the opposition centre-right party, the PSD, has taken away the ruling Socialist Party's once comfortable lead in the polls. 1 in 10 voters are still undecided, meaning that the outcome of the election is still wide open. However, the far-right party Chega is expected to make huge gains. It currently has only 1 seat in Parliament. The snap election was called after the 2022 draft budget was rejected in October. There are fears that another minority government will prevail, just as Portugal is trying to boost its tourism-dependent economy after being badly hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Ballots close at 8 p.m. on Sunday, and the official results are expected a few hours later. Pressure on the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson over alleged lockdown parties at Downing Street is rising. Some senior Tory MPs have now joined the opposition leader Keir Starmer's call for full information from the civil servant Sue Gray's investigation into the events.
What I want to see is Sue Gray's report in full and the investigation finished as quickly as possible, because we're in this situation where the whole of government is paralysed because the police are now looking at what the Prime Minister was getting up to in Downing Street.
After the police decided to investigate the scandal dubbed Partygate, they asked Sue Gray to make minimal reference to events they are looking at in her report. And for some, this is casting doubts over how complete the report will be. Some MPs are concerned that the police's investigation will water down the report itself and delay it, but the police have defended their position and insist that this is not the case. Downing Street has said it will publish the report as soon as it is received. Protests were held across Vienna on Saturday against COVID-19 restrictions. Police there reported up to 10,000 participants, and some had to be dispersed using pepper spray. Fines were also given for resisting authorities, not wearing masks, and violating COVID-19 restrictions on gatherings. On Saturday, the Austrian government also announced that restrictions will begin to ease. From February the 5th, shops and restaurants will be allowed to open until midnight. From the 12th, proof of vaccination or recovery will no longer be required to enter shops. And a week later, anyone not vaccinated will be allowed to enter restaurants as long as they have a negative coronavirus test. And in Russia on Saturday, over 100,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported, one of the highest numbers since the pandemic started. Authorities are trying to increase the vaccination rates of children aged 12 to 17. 50% of hospitalized children are between 0 and 4 years old. These are children who are sick, with a high temperature, but luckily this temperature stops within 2 or 3 days. They are practically free of pneumonia. The highly spreadable Omicron variant accounts for the majority of new cases in Russia. A demonstration against sexual harassment has been held in Amsterdam. The protest, called No Blame But Change, was organised by We Are M. The foundation is calling for the urgent implementation of a new morality law which will criminalise all forms of involuntary sex. We need to change in order to stop victim blaming. It starts with the perpetrator. We must be made aware that this is happening every day to children, to men and to women. Furthermore, the proposal for the new law must be brought forward. It is currently planned for 2024. The Netherlands' former Justice Minister Ferdinand Grapperhaus did say that the new law could be introduced in 2024, and for many at the protest this is not soon enough. They want it to come into effect now. But according to the Ministry of Justice, however, this is not possible due to the normal process to pass a bill. The protest was organised after a programme was broadcast on YouTube that showed the extent of sexual misconduct in the hit Dutch series The Voice of Holland.
Sergio Mattarella was re-elected president in the 8th round of voting when he passed 505 votes out of 1,009. Applause broke out in Parliament, prompting the Chamber of Deputies president to interrupt his reading aloud of the ballots. The count then resumed, with Mattarella continuing on to win 759 votes. These conditions impose on us. We must not shirk from the duties to which we are called, and naturally we must prevail over other considerations and different personal perspectives with commitment, responding to the expectations and hopes of our fellow citizens. Premier Mario Draghi had initially put himself forward as a candidate, but as the voting dragged on he backed Mattarella and helped persuade him not to retire despite being 80 years old, and when his second term ends he'll be 87. Our correspondent says not everyone has supported the candidacy of Sergio Mattarella. In fact, this choice has created divisions inside parties and above all inside the centre-right. Let's see how this might impact the government in the next months.
Euronews, Roma.
North Korea is suspected of having conducted its largest missile test ever since 2017 on Sunday. According to Japanese and South Korean military forces, the ballistic missile was launched on a high trajectory to avoid its neighbours' territorial spaces. It is thought to have reached a maximum 2,000 kilometres altitude and travelled 800 before landing in the sea. The test was the country's 7th round of weapons launches this month that have sparked fears in neighbouring countries. North Korea's activities, including the consecutive firing of ballistic missiles, is a great threat to the peace of our nation, the region, and international society. Firing such a high-intensity ballistic missile violates the United Nations Security Council, and we have strongly protested to North Korea. Both Japan and South Korea have called a meeting of their respective national security councils. They fear that their northern neighbour will end its 2018 suspension on long-range ballistic missiles and nuclear device tests. The South Korean president has called for North Korea to stop its provocative actions and for it to respond to international demands and resume dialogue. However, since the beginning of the year, the North's leader, Kim Jong-un, has shown no intention of resuming the stalled dialogue on denuclearization. Hundreds of people protested on the streets of Pristina on Saturday. They are opposed to the government's plans to increase the price of energy. They headed towards the Parliament building, where scuffles broke out with police as they were stopped from entering. Light bulbs were thrown against windows. The Kosovan government has said it is unable to keep energy supplies at the current price. Protests against the Repsol oil refinery have taken place in Peru. Residents across the country are angry after almost 12,000 barrels of crude oil spilled into the sea 2 weeks ago. The ecological disaster is being blamed on surging waves caused by the eruption of an underwater volcano near Tonga. However, Peruvian authorities are investigating the oil company. Hundreds of truck drivers have driven into the Canadian capital to protest about the compulsory COVID-19 vaccination required to cross the US border. Both Canada and the United States imposed that restriction in mid-January. The self-titled Freedom Convoy also joined thousands of other protesters angry at other COVID-19 restrictions.